So we're here today with Chris An, who is leading U.S. software-defined vehicle and connected vehicle practice. We ask your time to share your perspective with our Korean clients and Korean market about SDV. We think SDV is not a separate vehicle, but a very core function and core element of the future of the vehicles. AI is doing more and more about that in that context. So with AI adoption accelerated, what you see is the major change that is visible in automotive industry or mobility industry overall.
In terms of specifically to SDV, right? The opportunity that AI brings to software-defined vehicles, the obvious one is speed. And so if you consider a vehicle having 100 to 120 million lines of code, if you can create that code or simplify that code at a much faster rate than it takes for typical human engineers to do, then there's value right away, right? So I think there's a cost-benefit value that comes right off the bat. Broader in the mobility industry, I think what AI is unlocking is our new opportunities. I think often we talk about AI replacing human roles. I disagree with that premise. I think AI is augmenting human roles in the interim, but this interim is going to an end state where it's creating new roles that don't exist today that may need to exist in the future.
OEM is not a natural-born software company. They are manufacturing companies and mechanical companies. So they have difficulty in adjusting in how to efficiently manage the production of the softwares and also code itself. So also many OEMs tell us that they have difficulty in managing the test processes. Not only just a software test, but also software test on the hardware.
Yes.
What will be your perspective on it?
When you bring hardware into the equation, software on hardware, it brings a level of complexity that's 100 times what typical regular software cloud-based does. So in today's world of just developing a vehicle, forget about software for a second, there are many different teams that are required to work together who have their own suppliers to bring all these things together within 3 to 5 years to finally get a car off the production line. Now, once you add a software layer to that, you've doubled the amount of teams that there are, right? Even before applying AI is to even rethink the operating structure of this supply chain. Today, these are one step, one step, one step, one step. We need to move to a culture where all of this is collaborated from day one. It's systems thinking. And that systems thinking is a culture that will take time because a lot of traditional automakers have been doing engineering, have been running engineering functions the same way for 100 years, right? And so there's a big cultural shift that needs to happen, not just on the software side, but also on just the pure R&D and engineering side of the vehicle to appreciate the level that software, how early software needs to be brought in. Then applying AI. I think if there's opportunities to solve for efficiency with AI without doing the big upfront changes, but with the big upfront changes, then applying AI, then we've changed the game altogether. AI for AI's sake is not as valuable as really rethinking and reimagining the process and operating model.
Yes, that is a very important point. And also, as you know, Hyundai have announced a robotics change here. And at the same time, they're talking about software-defined factory, but basically it is an innovation of the manufacturing process using software and also robotics and everything that is available. But one thing the client is very clear is that they start with processes. And then there are digitalization and the possibility of using AI or robotics. So Hyundai, they did not show a vehicle in the CES. No, they didn't. Right? Of course, the Boston Dynamics is a robotics company, but basically they have announced partnering for human progress. So basically meaning they are not only mobility, future of dealing with the future of mobility, but a bigger picture. And then they're telling that robotics are their futures. So what do you think? Why a auto company talking about robotics?
What I'm seeing as a signal out of CES this year is the robotics market is real. Whether it's 5 billion, 5 trillion in 10 years or 5 years, that's still to be determined, but it will come. And the thing that I find interesting about robotics, humanoid robotics specifically, is actually not all that different than vehicle assembly. Where it's very different is the software that's behind it. And so one of the things I've been thinking a lot about this week, Taehwan, and some of the things I've been talking in the market about is what happens with our tier one suppliers. So now the tier one suppliers have another market that has nothing to do with mobility devices. It has to do with humanoid robots. They're not competing markets. They already have the know-how, they have the tooling, they're able to scale production if there's going to be 50,000, 500,000 of robots units sold. They have all of the know-how already. Then the supply chain will get disrupted for automakers, right? There will be optionality that suppliers have, and they might be able to raise prices on their components. Affordability is the number one issue for consumers. Now, if we see components getting more expensive because there's higher demand from the robotics industry, that's counterproductive to solving for the affordability challenge. So there's a big challenge here outside of SDV, AI. I see another challenge that's coming down over the next 5 years around the demand-supply equation for tier one suppliers.
Great point. So for at least 2 or 3 years, when I meet up with our suppliers, most of them are saying because of the EV, we are doomed. But that is not the case right now because they will have another option, new market for example, robotics, and also there are lots of new things that they can do rather than just sticking to the mechanical parts businesses.
Right.
So some point of time, they will have another power in the market to reshape how the market will look like and also how they're dealing with their OEM clients at the same time.
Yeah.
Really it is. And then also, when you go to the HL Mando, they of course have been producing actuators for the cars, but that can be an actuator for robots. Sure. So, and also they are starting a new business of being a real OEM for small transportation, mobility devices, or even robots.
Yeah.
Not like OEMs, but they can build up a new market themselves.
And it makes total sense. The tooling, the assets, equipment, very similar. Even things like fluid companies.
Yeah.
Robotics will need fluids. Robotics will need wiring harnesses.
Yes.
Aluminum. All these things that supply for auto market today at scale, there is now a new scaled market that will come in the next 10 years that is great for the suppliers, but I think auto manufacturers need to be on the lookout for managing BOM costs in the supply chain.
Before letting you go, before leaving CES, what would be your final message to our Korean audiences?
Every year I come to CES Taiwan, I see so much cool technology out on the floor. I've been working in the auto industry a long time. It's not so simple as taking that technology and then putting it on my vehicle, right? The challenge that I always leave CES thinking about, all of this cool technology, but the unfair things that we put on our automaker clients is they have 3 to 5 year design to launch cycles, but they have to predict the future for consumer behavior expecting 3 to 5 month innovation. That is a very, very difficult problem to solve for that I don't think AI alone can solve for it. I don't think suppliers will solve for it for the automakers. These are automakers that have to make hard decisions to think about that future. But the consumer demand is accelerating much faster than we're accelerating production. And we have to solve that problem quickly.
Good point. The OEMs have to think about the future market and future consumer behavior and an attitude for that one. But what they can do, as you have pointed, is that the cycle itself is too short to deal with, while they have to spend 3 or 4 years for a new product. Having a good platform to have flexibility to house the future innovation of the technologies, that'll be a very important and critical point. Thank you for that. We will take it as a takeaway. And thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you so much.